Have you ever noticed that when you try to get out of a big, life-changing situation, you come to realize it might not be as bad as you originally assumed? Well, that's what Ronnie Anne found out in the episode I'm going to talk about today. So join me as I, SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, bring you another retro review from past seasons of The Loud House. Cue the intro! Today's episode is the Loudest mission, Relative Chaos. In this episode, Ronnie Anne and Bobby go to visit their extended family, the Casagrandes, for what they assume is only for 2 days. But when Ronnie Anne finds out her mom was secretly planning to move her family out of Royal Woods and into the big city with their relatives, she enlists both Lincoln and Lori to help prevent such a change from happening. I consider this not only one of the best episodes of Season 2, but also the entire series. It serves as a backdoor pilot to what would later become the Loud House spin-off, the Casagrandes. However, when this episode first came out, there were no signs indicating that there would be a spin-off, and I assumed this would be the last time we ever saw Ronnie Anne and Bobby Santiago. At the time, I saw this episode as very bittersweet. Just when Ronnie Anne was beginning to get some good character development following episodes such as Dance Dance Resolution and Shell Shock, not to mention making great strides in her newly found friendship with Lincoln, the status quo was changed and she was officially written out of Royal Woods. There was still a lot of untapped potential in her character, and we never got the opportunity to see if she would officially join Lincoln's friend group as we saw with Stella in Season 3. But you know, looking back now, Ronnie Anne leaving the Loud House was actually the best thing to ever happen to her. When the spinoff was officially announced in March of 2018, I knew her adventures in Great Lake City would continue, and Season 3 of the Loud House gave us a few glimpses into how she was adjusting to her new environment. Fast forward to 2019, we got to see more episodes focusing exclusively on her and her new best friend Sid Chang during the first few episodes of the 4th season of TLH, and the spinoff began its official run a few months later the same year. Over the course of the Casagrande episodes in Season 4 of The Loud House and the spinoff's 3 main seasons, Ronnie Anne's personality underwent a few noticeable changes. She went from being an aggressive bully who loves playing pranks, mostly at Lincoln's expense, to a kinder and gentler preteen who got to showcase a lot more of her hobbies and interests. And of course, her love for pranking never truly left either. She grew more as a character when she moved to Great Lake City than she did in Royal Woods. Granted, we'll never really know if she would have undergone a similar change had the status quo been reset by the end of the mid-season 2 finale of The Loud House, but in the long run, she proved she can be more than just a recurring character. She was able to hold her own as the main star of her own series, and over time she became a better and more relatable character. Definitely no longer the generic blank slate everyone once thought she was. I still wish she hadn't been written out of the main series so early, but given what happens later on, she still got the development she rightfully needed and deserved. But anyway, let's get to the review of this episode. Relative Chaos not only offers good development for Ronnie Anne's character, but it also gives us a solid introduction to the Casagrandes, who really do come off as their own version of the Loud family. Given the nature of what happens in a family that size, it's no wonder Ronnie Anne said Lincoln would enjoy hanging out with them. And why not? These characters are great and they all have something different and interesting to offer. Each member of the Casagrande family is quite unique in their own way. There's Rosa, the grandmother who loves to cook and believes in superstitions, Hector, the gossip-loving grandfather and owner of the family bodega, Carlos, the know-it-all college professor, Frida, the photo-taking and overly emotional mother, the ever-fashionable Carlota, the so-called slick ladies' man Carl, the happy-go-lucky CJ, and the mimicking toddler Carlitos. They also have a dog named Lalo and a wisecracking talking parrot named Sergio. On the surface, it does appear this family is collectively its own blend of the Loud family and possess the same personality traits, especially how they all enjoy watching the Dreamboat, but individually, these characters are just different enough to not be considered carbon copies of any one particular Loud House character. The way this episode introduces the Casagrandes and then goes about presenting them throughout the story is balanced very nicely. Their individual personalities and standout character traits are neither underplayed nor overplayed, although I guess that might depend on certain members of the family. Anyway, Frida lets her family in on what was supposed to be a secret kept strictly between herself and Ronnie Anne and Bobby's mother, Maria. The secret plan was to move the Santiago family to Great Lake City, and Maria wanted to make sure both of her kids would be on board to making such a big change. That's when the Casagrandes begin making attempts to sway Bobby and Ronnie Anne into wanting to stay with them. While Bobby has no problem blending in and offers a few suggestions for making the bodega more successful, Ronnie Anne doesn't feel as excited about being with the Casagrandes at all. She's basically the Lincoln Loud in this situation. She feels she can't escape the insanity and get some alone time from her family no matter where she goes in their small living space, and can't wait to leave when the weekend is over. When you think about it, it's no wonder she and Lincoln ended up being so compatible as friends, because they both technically lived the same life. However, CJ lets it slip how Ronnie Anne and Bobby are not leaving whatsoever, prompting Maria to come clean about the real reason why they came to the big city. And while this excites Bobby, this absolutely devastates Ronnie Anne. Feeling outnumbered, she gets Lori and subsequently Lincoln to come over to help prevent her family from moving. Lincoln doesn't really do much to help in the plan because he's mostly seen in the apartment eating Rose's food and playing with CJ. Lori, on the other hand, makes it her mission to sway Bobby into wanting to come back to Royal Woods. As to be expected, all her attempts to get Bobby to stop obsessing over the bodega backfire. Not even when she tries out a new gorgeous look, which definitely deserves a... And they seemingly end their relationship when she believes Bobby cares more about the bodega than her. One thing I want to quickly acknowledge about Lori and Bobby's relationship is how it's handled during certain points in the episode. They act way too clingy and attached at just the idea of being apart for 2 days when the episode begins, and how Lori basically smashed the panic button when she found out Bobby might be leaving Royal Woods forever. While I understand Lori would be furious at the idea of Bobby thinking he cares more about a bodega than his own girlfriend, which was clearly the case going based on his actions, she made it sound as if nothing should be more important to Bobby than her, not even his own family. That's the impression I got, and it made Lori look very selfish. Then again, I found it strange how quick Bobby was to forget Lori even existed the moment he found out he was moving in with the Casagrandes. He didn't look to be too considerate of Lori's feelings until Lori felt obligated to show up to talk in person. He went from super clingy to, Lori? Who's Lori? Again, that's just the initial impression I got. However, those two eventually do talk things over, and Lori is finally okay with Bobby moving. It turned out Bobby actually had been thinking really hard about how to make their relationship work. That's definitely not the impression I got. And then they set up a plan to be together in 1 year's time. Ronnie Anne and her mother also had a conversation about moving, and I really liked how it was handled based on how the story was set up. The best thing about their exchange is neither one of them is presented as being in the wrong or selfish for wanting, or I guess not wanting, to do something. Ronnie Anne didn't want to move because she liked her old house and liked having a lot more freedom and privacy. If you ever had to move to a new and unfamiliar place, especially if you didn't want to, you really sympathize with Ronnie Anne's reasoning, and you can't invalidate her feelings. Maria wanted to move because she felt bad for always leaving her kids home alone and fending for themselves whenever she had to work multiple shifts at the hospital. She felt moving in with a big family would make her children feel less lonely, and she could also get a job in the city. So she figured everyone could benefit in the long run. Just like her daughter, you really sympathize with Maria's reasoning, and you can't really invalidate her feelings either. Still, this mother wasn't going to force her daughter to move if she didn't feel comfortable with such a big change, and she was willing to call the whole thing off just for her. Now that is a surefire sign of being a good parent. Surprisingly, Ronnie Anne had a change of heart when she saw the new bedroom the Casagrandes made for her, and decided she wanted to stay after all. I will admit that was a little bit of a phoned-in moment because of how quick she was to change her mind when there was nothing to gradually build towards it, but it honestly doesn't matter. The surprise the Casagrandes gave Ronnie Anne proved how even though they can be a little invasive and sometimes a little annoying to be around, they still love her and see her as more than just an extended family member. It was a really sweet moment, but it was quickly ruined when the gang of rowdy street cats Hector warned about earlier broke into the apartment and started causing mayhem. It was a little funny, and they did the whole save the cake gag or whatever it's called, but it's really not a full-blown negative that ruins the ending. It just felt a little unnecessary. The two things that make the ending to this episode worthwhile were when the Louds were saying goodbye to the Santiagos, and Lincoln giving Ronnie Anne a tip to help her get adjusted to her new home. She breaks the fourth wall and talks to the audience. It's kinda humorous how she suddenly becomes aware of people watching her every move the same way Lincoln does on a regular basis. It's a little weird, but hey, this episode is no stranger to being weird. Overall, this is one episode that deserves all the praise it can get. It may not center directly on the Loud family, but the story and characters in Great Lake City still provide that familiar Loud family insanity. This episode was a real game changer by switching up the status quo, and that's something I greatly greatly appreciate. This gave Ronnie Anne some good character development. Lori and Bobby began a new chapter in their relationship, barring of course the over and underselling of the emotional attachment they displayed in the episode, and it laid the groundwork for what would later become the spin-off to the Loud House. The pacing of the story was very good, the humor was solid enough to not feel boring or stupid, and the way the Casagrandes were introduced and written was tastefully done. Maria Santiago also had one of her biggest roles in the series. She demonstrated what it meant to be a caring mother with good intentions who would never try to force anything on her family if everyone didn't agree. Lincoln didn't really provide too much to the story. Lori's attempts to get Bobby's attention were worth a few laughs, and of course Carl had his own humorous attempts to get Lori's attention. He's like the more confident version of Clyde McBride. You know, wanting to impress Lori by trying to be a total stud, except Carl doesn't get excessive nosebleeds and turn into a robot while standing next to her. At least Carl can be funny when he fails to win over a girl we all know he's never going to get. But anyway, I honestly don't know what else I can say about this episode other than it's worth every minute and you'll definitely get your money's worth with it. With that said, I give The Loudest Mission Relative Chaos a 9.3 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of The Loudest Mission Relative Chaos. So I gotta ask, what did you guys think of this episode? Sound off in the comments below and be sure to click that subscribe button for more Loud House related content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.